source on the side of an old township. Outback Queensland. Boom or bust eras, I suppose. This was an old town. All this dates back into the late 1800s. This here was the site of the Imperial Hotel. Every town had to have an Imperial Hotel or a Royal Hotel. This was the Imperial Hotel. Sort of around the 1880s. While I eat my pie. This here, side of the National Bank, right next to the hotel. So, always handy, I suppose, if you need more money for the pub, right next door. I love these old places. And spend hours, well, I usually do, spend hours just kicking around, looking at the ground, seeing what old relics are still here. As you expect, lots of broken glass, tin cans, usual story. The new residents, all cattle.
I'm just going to make a phone call, be back in a minute. Crikey, I haven't seen one of these doors for years. Very old.
With the pies in the belly, artefacts looked over, and Wayno remembering how to open a phone booth door, we got moving towards our next camp, as the day was fast disappearing. And just watch these bends up here, you need to go pretty slow. So watch out for the S-bends up here, you need to go pretty slow.
Okay.
Pretty arid countryside. Still good for cattle. So have a look up in here. I just spotted it from the side of the road as we were coming through. This surface here, this is rock. Dead set rock. Look at this little oasis up here. Few cows. Hopefully I don't get run over by a rogue bull. But we'll see. This is cattle farming property. It's a big station here. I'm not going to get too carried away in here. Just caught my eye. I just want to have a bit of a gander.
Taking it slow with the S-bends.
Just watch my ute in the middle of the road.
Taking it very slow with the S-bends.
I will forever be amazed when I come across things like that. When you see that dry countryside that you come through,
Camp is right here.
and there's something like that, Wayno on the radio, wanting to stay here. Oh, it's awesome, that's all I can say. I love it. Be nice to see if there's any fish in there. Nice cool dip. I don't know what the temperature is, but we're in the 30s. Quite warm. Absolute magic. Now, that little oasis by the crossing probably should have been a clue as to what our next campsite would be like. But in all honesty, we would never have expected this. Morning. Oh, what a night. We spent last night essentially just sitting under the stars. We had no campfire. There was zero light pollution out here because we're so far out. So no big towns, no big cities or anything. And such a massive sky. We just sat there looking at the stars, and I'd love to try and capture it on camera, but otherwise you're just going to have to come out here and have a look for yourself. And it was just watching satellites. We didn't even know, but the moon was pretty bright, as you'd expect, and we could just see these satellites. They were just orbiting the moon, and we didn't even realise. And apparently, yes, that's right. There are satellites that just orbit the moon. And we were just watching them, and it only take a minute or so. You'd see it zap around, come right out, and then disappear. About a minute or so later, there goes another one. Apparently there's 2 or 3, something like that. There might be more, I'm not sure. But there was definitely 3 that we could see, because you'd see all 3 at once at one stage. Yeah. Never ever seen that before. You don't see that unless you get out in areas like this. But this landscape just keeps on giving, you know. Early morning, and come down to check out the creek with my cup of tea.
Hey Phil, what do you think about this campsite?
Yeah, it's typical of all the campsites we've got here. You know, pretty average.
It is, isn't it? When are we leaving? We're not. Ah.
This is where we live now.
Well,
Oasis in the desert.
there's plenty of water.
Fish. More fish. This is rocks. Crap, we'll take both things.
I don't know, they don't look like catfish. They might be single. Shut up, Russell.
Always wondered how these holes were formed in these rocks, and you know, if you have a look through all here, it really looks like lava, and I believe that's what a lot of this stuff is. It comes sort of from a volcano, you know, millions and millions of years ago. But these holes always look funny because majority of them, there's some bigger ones up the top here, but they're quite circular. You know, you see the random sort of pattern style, but then you get these ones here that they start to get more regular, and some of the holes up further are almost like they were carved out by a drill. And years ago I came across the answer, and the answer actually lies in the bottom of the hole. So if you have a look down in here, you see all those rocks. What happens is during flood, the water comes rushing through here. These rocks get caught in the hole, and as the water's rushing through, it starts swirling the rocks, and they just sit there swirling, 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 and just wearing away at the rock until they carve this big hole. And you can imagine over how many years it would take to carve a hole that size. Well, I'll duck up here shortly, and I'll give you a couple of better examples. It's an amazing process, and you just got to think how long it takes for it to carve those holes in those rocks. So back up on top of the gorge, and these are the holes I was talking about. If you have a look at this one, you can see the natural flow of the water as it runs off the rock. And here's the start of a small hole. You can see how almost perfectly round it is. And it's literally these rocks over time, they get caught in here, and then they just get caught up and start swirling. Normally it'd sort of round the rocks off too, so I'd say it keeps getting replenished with rocks, but they just happen to get caught in here, and they swirl around, 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 and then they're gone. You can see where all the marks over time. But this is a little one. Look at it compared to my hand. So it's relatively new. Having said that, it's probably thousands of years old, or started thousands of years ago. We duck over here, over to these holes over here. Now these ones must have taken some water. And again, you see in the bottom of the hole where it starts to get really, really round, and the rocks in there, and it's literally like a tumble washer, and those rocks are just going round, around, around. I duck down in here, you see where they're really rounding off. They're becoming quite smooth from all that action. So these ones have been stuck in here for a long time, you know, because none of these rocks are that round. We're looking at volcanic sort of rock, sharp, jagged rocks all over to the side, but once they get caught in here and start running around here for a few million years, they get rounded off. Some of them are quite new, but yeah, I'd say the rounder it is, the longer it's been sitting in this hole. At the top of this gorge is the main creek, which doesn't permanently flow down into it. Only after heavy rain, when the water level rises, does it flow across the massive rock surface and then cascades down into the gorge. Following along what looked to be a second path on which the water could flow, we came across what can only be described as, well, a bloody big hole in the rock.
About 500 metres from our campsite, this is what we found.
So a source of water like this, you've seen how arid, I suppose, this area is. So having something like this in the middle of this area, and I'm not sure how far this actually extends, but the creek that we came in on, where I stopped on the side of the road, and I said, you know, like, it's amazing. You know, you don't expect things like this where we are, and that actually forms part of this very creek. Now, you can imagine how important these were to Aboriginal people way back in the day. From up top, we've seen turtles, we've seen fish, there's cherubim in here. I dare say there'd be eels. Haven't seen any yet, but you can't go anywhere without finding an eel. But then you've got animals that come into the water for drinking, so many birds and stuff. There's wallabies. We've seen evidence of wallabies. We haven't seen any of them yet, but apparently the yellow-footed rock wallaby does live in this area. So you can imagine, as a food source and as a survival area, how important this would have been to Aboriginal people way back in the day, and how far this extends. And they wouldn't have ventured too far from here, I wouldn't think. They'd certainly go out hunting, whatever, but you wouldn't think they'd stray too far from this area, because it's fairly permanent. To have those turtles in here, and that other gorge we looked at, the size of the turtles that are in there at the moment, obviously they don't get hunted anymore, so they're able to grow up a lot bigger, but the amount and the size of those turtles in there, you'd think that would be a fairly staple sort of diet. So yeah, areas like this, you can see how survival is possible out in these areas, as long as you've got things like this somewhere that you can access. Now those holes up top, some of the smaller ones, if they're deep, they would have been covered. I've shown before the old Nama hole. That's how they usually get formed. And they do get utilised. They get covered up to try and trap the water, stop evaporation for a long time. But I'm not sure if that would have happened here, because you've got a much better, cleaner sort of flowing supply down through here.
Well, we always see the opened up ones by birds or fish or whatever, but a couple of liveys.
Yeah, for some reason, I mean, you're always seeing the carcasses around, empty shells, and then you just got to look here. He's grabbing them.
Check out this beauty.
Nice.
That's a good feed for something.
Yeah.
Not me, because I'm going to put it back.
Sometimes they can be a bit hard to spot, but... Oh, that's a rock. But yeah, that was a good size one. So it's usually the birds that grab them, pull them out though. I think they just leave them on the rock until they die, they sort of open up, and then they go in and eat them. I think that's how it works with birds. But you always find them up on spots. I don't know if anything else gets in there to eat them. Or bush tucker. We do like bush tucker.
Yes. And up there raw eating.
Just heading back down this track. There's another waterhole just down the road here, and back in the little town closest to here, which is like 70 odd k's away, the locals say that this waterhole's their favourite out of all the ones around this area. So we're just going to take a bit of a short drive. It's not too far from where we camp, and see what all the fuss is about. If it's anything like the ones we've seen, it's going to be pretty good. Yep, I get it. I see why the locals say this is their favourite one.
Well, so far me too.
Have a gander at that. I don't know what we're doing up here though.
No, we should
I think there's a track over here. Should be able to get down.
Yep.
Let's get a closer look at this.
Yes.
Mum just made the comment just before about how good this would look, this area would look in full flood. All the water coming out, and you can imagine the volume of water. So this one here is pretty dry. Obviously it doesn't hold the water, whereas this one over on this side where we just were is still got water in it. But you can imagine the water right across the top here, flowing, coming off this side and all flowing down this creek down over that side. I'd love to see that. That would be absolutely magnificent. Another reason to get out at different times of the year, explore what you can. Once back at camp, I couldn't help myself and just had to explore further down the gorge, just while Wayno had his afternoon siesta. And what I found blew away any expectations I had. It's just such an amazing contrast. you've got this scrub country, low-lying, there's malleewood, I don't even remember, gidgee trees, all whatever. But it's just so rocky, so flat, arid. And then you come across to here and look at this. It just becomes a completely different place down there. It could be on any river close to the coast. You just wouldn't know. Absolutely sensational. I could walk along exploring these gorges forever. They just go from one waterhole to another. Just seem endless. You climb over another little ridge and there's the next waterhole. Imagine seeing it when it's all flowing. I love this stuff. I really do. Now, as I was saying earlier about the mussels and how do the birds open them, I came across this one just exploring up this creek, and it's sitting up on the rocks. It's unopened. Obviously the ants are trying to get into it. It's unopened. I haven't touched it yet, but this is where it's sitting, high above the creek bed. Not even near the water. The water's further down there. I'll get a bit of a shot over the top of these rocks, just through the water down in there. Now, mussels do have a bit of a foot, so they open up their clam a little bit, and a little bit of a foot comes out, and they sit vertically into the sand or the mud, and they can actually move their way along through the mud. They actually move quite some distances, but they're not moving up on a rock. So something's put that there, and can only assume it's a bird. Like I said, maybe they'll come back later when the thing's died and baked in the sun a bit, it starts to open up, they'll come back and eat it. That's the only explanation I've got. I'm sure someone will tell me if it's something different, that's for sure. And please do. I'm always willing to learn. The problem with this stuff is you look up the creek a bit and you go, oh, that looks really cool. I want to see what that is. And you get up to that spot and you go, oh, further up the creek there's something else that looks really cool. I wonder what that is. And you know, you've just walked miles and miles. It's alright. We're camped on this creek. If I keep following it back, I should be good. Don't want to get lost out here, that's for sure. Although apparently there's a lot of seafood if I need the food to survive. Well, that's the end of the road for me. It's actually the junction of two creeks here. This one comes in through here, and this one that I was sort of walking along until I got to this point, which continues right up in under there. It's a shame. It's a perfect spot to bring the kayaks though. Problem is, getting them to this spot, wow, that's a mission and a half, I tell you. There's no easy way to do that. You got to drag them down canyons. So fortunately, I still get to see it with my feet. Oh, this is an awesome spot. It just looks so fishy too. Guarantee there's yellow belly in here, silver perch, possibly sooty grunner. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to fish in here. It's a bit of a protected area. We're allowed to be here, we just can't fish, which is a shame because geez, it looks fishy. And while I'm sitting here, I've just realised, I mean, this area could be anywhere along sort of inland from the east coast, not thousands of kilometres inland from the coast. I just realised what I'm sitting next to. Paperbark trees, melaleucas. It's the sort of tree you just really don't expect to be coming across the land where we've been. The last thing you expect is melaleucas. If you know melaleucas, they're really dependent on water. You find them in swampy areas and all sorts of stuff. And you can see why they're here. Don't get me wrong. It's that unexpected bit, you know. Such a cool spot. I don't mean cool, man. I mean it's nice and cool, away from the heat up on the rocks. So here's that junction. It's just up on the bank, just up on here. So the junction of this creek here. Junction of this creek here. And somewhere down there is where we're camped. Such a different spot. I don't know if you can see it or not, whether it shows up on the GoPro. Just been sitting here long enough. You know, if you sit still, quiet, just take it all in, the animals start feeding in. You'll see I've been watching turtles pop up. Just being still, you know. And what comes swimming down the river? I don't know if you can see him or not. Right down here, old man pelican. I'm not sure if he'll come closer or not, but starting to swim back the other way. So I'll sit here a bit longer and see how close he comes down. Unfortunately, Mr. Percival didn't get any closer, and right now it's time for me to get closer to camp, because tomorrow we're off once again to find another absolutely beautiful piece of scenery.
Well, that was a pretty awesome camp spot for the last couple of days. So we're off now, hit the dirt road again, a couple hundred k's, not sure where we're headed to now. We've got a couple of ideas, but depending on how rough the road is when we get there, it's supposed to be a 4-drive only track. So it could mean what we've already been on, or a bit worse. So in the meantime, we're off. Probably the next town's about 300 k's away. We need to fuel up and get some more supplies, and yeah, then see where the road leads us to.
Copy, Wayno?
Yeah, copy.
Don't you just love it on some of these 4-drive shows where they start driving away from their campsite and they call up the people behind them and they say, "Oh, how good was that campsite?" As if they didn't just spend the whole time camped together, have breakfast together, maybe pack up camp together, and maybe never once mentioned how good that campsite was.
fantastic. You know, 3 days of R&R and a bit of walking, exploring, and finding new water holes that a lot of people probably don't even go to. But yeah, we did it.
Yeah, always goes to show if you just get off that big track a bit. I don't mean with your 4-drive, I mean with your 2 feet. You might just find another hidden gem that not many people get to see because they won't use their feet.
Exactly right. So when you go to these places, bring a nice set of hiking boots and go for a walk.
And try not to get lost.
Well, exactly. You didn't get lost, did you?
No, as long as I kept the creek on my left, or was that my right? I'm not sure now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Anyway, you didn't get lost because you're still driving.
That is true. Oh, on to the next one. See what we can find there.
Looking forward to it.
Coming up in the 5th and final part to this series. Wayno crosses the line. So as Wayno comes across, this is what happens. I cross a creek, and we both cross off yet another glorious view. Just got to find it first.
Yeah.
But that's half of the adventure, people.
Google is your friend.
No, don't tell them that. That's next time on the final episode of Tyrone and Beyond.